Broadcast Radio, the station that's giving veterans a voice.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Think of all that time. Every wait in the winter. All those hours no one else. Think of all that time. Think of every sacrifice in the summer. Every wait in the mornings on the levee. Late nights in the film room. Bus rides to playoff games. Every bump in the road. Every moment of ecstasy. Every moment of doubt. Years wondering. Is it all worth it? It's all led to this. Man, I got this. It's a 60-minute drive for a 60-minute game. After all the miles we've traveled, we're almost there. After all the hours we've worked, one more can make us legends. After all that time, this is our time.
Opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Good knowing exactly where to go with the football.
Okay. I don't know why it does that. I've had issues all week. Nonetheless, welcome into Inside the Hoosier Mind, brought to you in part by Military Broadcast Radio, helping give veterans a voice, helping teach them how to podcast, and most importantly, letting veterans' voices be heard. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Hopefully this stays through. There's a little bit of storms going through Indiana right now. Lost power for only like 30 seconds, but still like reset my internet and everything. So hopefully that stays true and stays the way we are. We already got MJ in the comments saying we are. For anybody who doesn't know, MJ is a massive Penn State fan, and she likes to remind me of that, and I like to, poke fun at her a little bit and whatnot. Of course, we got Jay from ASAP joining in as well. And then we got Into the Weeds podcast, hosted by Laura and Amber both. So if you like anything sci-fi, creepy, or honestly, you just like the tea for a lot of the social drama, those two ladies are the ones that you want to go to for all of that. But nonetheless, though, I have a repeat guest that's a special guy coming back on to the podcast today by a gentleman by the name of Jackson, who is a huge Packers fan, as well as a South Carolina Gamecocks fan, who's going to be joining. We're going to be discussing a little bit about his Packers, how he feels about the Matthew Golden draft, how he feels about Jordan Love, if he's still the guy or not, how Jackson feels about the college football playoffs expanding, and, of course, Jackson's former quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, and if he will ever sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers because he's somewhat of a drama queen. We've also got Charles in here He is the husband of Amber and Alora's dad, big supporter of, I'm assuming, of Into the Weeds podcast. Also in here saying, I hear her husband's creepy. I haven't heard that one. I have not heard that you're creepy, good sir. I've heard nothing good but good things. I've heard you're also incredibly intelligent. So I mean, you're good in my book so far, at least. But nonetheless, with all that being said, let us go ahead and get Jackson in here.
The interview of the week is brought to you by Jersey Mike's, a sub above.
Jackson, welcome in, good sir. How are you? It has been a hot minute.
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
Pretty good. So let's just jump right into it, man. We'll jump into a little bit with college first, because I know there's a little bit to talk about there, but there's not a whole lot. They kind of already talked about this when they first did the playoff expansion, when they expanded the teams to 12 this past season. They said that they were going to do this for the 2024 and the 2025 season, and then potentially in 2026 they were going to have the option to expand it out to 14 teams. Now we're hearing a little bit of rumors that it might be 16 teams that we could expand out to. So realistically, about the top third of your top 25, well, 2/3 of your top 25 are potentially going to be eligible to make a playoff run. And it also leaves more room for error. Like, you could have a 3 to 4 loss team now in the playoffs as a result. So I kind of got two questions for you. And I'll ask the first one, then we'll jump into the second one. Do you like the idea of them expanding it out past 12, or do you kind of already think 12 might be a bit too much just from what we've seen this past season?
Well, personally, I think 14 or 16 would have been great this past season.
Right. Because your Gamecocks would have gotten in, especially
snuck in
as they finished as hot as they did.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's really fine either way. I think 12 seems like a good number to me. But I know as an SEC fan, I think I'm supposed to root for the more teams. I know the Big Ten and SEC are big time pushing for 16.
Yeah.
I think 12 or 16 seems like a lot,
Mm-hmm.
just in terms of valuing regular season games. But also the playoffs were really fun, most of them. So I'm all for more football. So either way is good for me.
Right. Well, that kind of leads into the second part of my question, because like you pointed out, had they had been expanded, South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Alabama were one of the three teams left that they were constantly debating on. All right, should they be in the playoffs, and should they potentially replace either SMU, Clemson, whoever was going to come out of the ACC, and it ultimately ended up, believe it or not, they kept SMU in. I thought for sure they were going to boot SMU out. But my second question was going to be, do you think they were primarily doing this mostly for Alabama? Because if you remember when that schedule first dropped, Alabama was in, and myself included. I was like, there's absolutely no reason for it. Now, of course, all the Alabama Crimson Tide fans that have accumulated over the years through due to their past success and whatnot are like, roll Tide, we love the taste of your tears, like all this crap. But realistically, it's like, okay, well, it's hard to make an argument when you lose to a really bad Oklahoma team this year. You get like destroyed actually by Oklahoma. You get blown out by Vandy to boot, and you can't sit here and say, oh, well, if the Tide get in, Tide got in, they weren't going to do anything, but it was also going to be crap because they were going to hand the Tide probably the easiest path in the playoffs. Like if they want to go through the gauntlet, yeah, sure. Alabama can go in as much as they want, but they weren't going to do that. Do you think that's part of why they're expanding it?
I think it probably is. I think it's really just the SEC in general. I mean, I think those are three like really good teams: South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Alabama that got left out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just I think it's definitely pandering to the big conferences and the Big Ten as well. Because those teams, they do play a gauntlet just in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember a time where South Carolina hasn't had a top 10 strength of schedule.
Right.
And, a team like SMU played two decent teams and lost. So I think the more think you're definitely pandering to those because they want those big markets in.
Yeah. Yeah, and for anybody who doesn't know or anybody who hasn't paid as much of attention, so for the 16-team playoff, if I remember correctly, and correct me on my math, Jackson, if I'm wrong, the Big Ten wants 4 automatic bids. The SEC wants 4 automatic bids. So now we've got 8. They want to offer the Big 12 2. They want to offer the ACC 2. So then that would make up 12. So that would leave basically 4 spots left. We're going to assume one of those is going to be Notre Dame because at least in the current format, Notre Dame kind of all but has theirs kind of built in as far as being able to be in the playoffs, barring them having just a disaster of a season type of thing. So realistically, you've got 3 spots left that's kind of open, and that's if they kind of continue what they did with this one of whoever is the most, winning Power 5 or not power group of 5
Yeah.
conference champion left, they would get a spot. So then you kind of have 2 freebies left over from, I'm assuming, any one of the Power 4 conferences left at that point. What do you kind of think that's fair?
I don't know if fair is the right word, but it makes sense. You know, they control so much right now, just in terms of revenue, and they have generally speaking, the better teams. Like, I think it makes sense. I think my favorite part about the new stuff is the reseeding.
Yeah.
I like the top 4 teams just being the top 4 teams,
Yes.
and not getting buys. I think that's probably the best part of it. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And that was kind of one of the things too and it's funny because that ended up working out this past playoffs. It was like all the lower teams basically got eliminated. Ohio State was like the last basically team as far as like low seeding goes, and they had to go on the road for all of them but one. So it's funny how that kind of worked out, but I am kind of a fan of it because it's one of those, if you're good enough to be one of the top 4 teams in college football, and then realistically you don't even get to host a
Right.
a playoff game, like it's kind of a smack in the face. It's like, well, yeah, it'd be cool because I mean, you got to think of all the money that they're kind of missing out on whenever they do that, and they're not capitalizing on it from such an like financial standpoint of, yeah, if it's say, let's say it's South Carolina and, let's say it's Clemson rolls in. So you get the Palmetto series twice in one season. And depending on how the first matchup goes, maybe it's a total revenge thing and, the momentum completely swings. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. One of the things I did want to get your thoughts on real quick before we change topics. I had a buddy and I talk about this before, because I feel like now a lot of the bowl games are just they're not what they used to be. They're kind of trash because now for a lot of guys the bowl games, they don't mean much of anything. Usually it's, teams that they've missed out on the playoffs. It's kind of their last chance to play type thing. A lot of your juniors that may or may not be moving on into the NFL, even your seniors and whatnot, they may or may not play in it. They may also be trying to get ready to move on to the next level and whatnot. Or if you're going to enter the transfer portal, you may or may not play. So we don't necessarily get the best of those teams for like better matchups and what they could be. My thought is maybe make some of these like big time matchups, especially early in the season when you have a lot more of the out of conference matchups, going off, make those bowl games. Like this upcoming season, obviously you've got, Texas versus Ohio State. You can't tell me you couldn't make that, like, I don't know, like the Pop Tart Bowl or just something like that, because it's okay. It's a big brand, it's a big name. More people are going to watch it now at the beginning of the season, especially now that it's going to be back, rather than kind of at the end. It's like, well, if say you're a fan of like Kansas State doesn't get in the playoffs, yeah, they're going to play a bowl game, but it doesn't really matter. Season's kind of over. It's not really for anything at that point. But do you think they should do something like that? Because again, I feel like they could get more money from that if they do like a Chick-fil-A bowl for like LSU and Clemson. It's like you're missing out on a ton of money if you do that.
I haven't thought about that, but I think that makes sense because especially like the companies that are sponsoring, like, that's a lot more money for them. Because those games definitely do matter more. Like I think it's week 1, Texas, Ohio State.
Yeah.
is going to matter a lot more than week 16, I don't know, Duke versus whoever.
Right.
So I think that actually is a cool idea that maybe could start. They could start implementing soon.
I think so. But we will take one quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll dive into the NFL. We'll dive into Jackson's Packers, the fact that they finally drafted a wide receiver for the first time in like 20 years, and if Jordan Love is the guy or not. So when we come back.
Tune in to Clado's Cacophony of Sound every Saturday night from 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern on Military Broadcast Radio at mbradio.us or on Twitch at DJ_Clado. MBR, giving veterans a voice.
She ain't mine, but she looks fine. Gonna take some time, gonna make her mine, gonna make her mine.
All right, welcome back into Inside the Hoosier Mind, brought to you in part by Military Broadcast Radio, helping give veterans a voice. Back here with Jackson to discuss his team, the Packers. So they did something that, I think a lot of Packers fans, wanted years ago, when you had much bigger names out there on the draft boards and whatnot, as far as drafting a wide receiver for the first time in forever. Out of Texas, Matthew Golden had a pretty decent career. He played 2 years at Houston, played about 20 games. Yeah, played 20 games. Came out of Houston, 13 touchdowns, just shy of 1,000 yards between the 2 years. And then Texas has a breakout season, played in 16 games, had, again, just under 1,000 yards receiving and had 9 touchdowns. And was a pretty big factor in the kick return game as well, but didn't have any kick returns for touchdowns. First wide receiver selected by the Packers since Javon Walker in 2022. So it's been 23 years since the Packers drafted a wide receiver. So Jackson, just give me your first thoughts. Is this one of those, you're happy that they did it, but are you like kind of frustrated it took them 23 years to decide, okay, yeah, now we'll draft a guy in the first round. Now we'll give our quarterback, whoever it is, a first round talent wide receiver, at least from face value?
Well, first of all, can we talk about how electric the announcement was with Mark Murphy going up there, getting I didn't know he was such a showman.
Yeah.
He really played the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the pick. And I don't really hold anything against them from the past because they wanted some of them. Like they really liked Njigba, they really liked Ayuk, and they really liked Jefferson. They just the draft board didn't fall that way.
Yeah.
So I'm not like super, whatever. It's in the past now.
Right.
But as for Matthew Golden, I'm really excited about what he can bring to the team.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting too, because it's funny because if you look at him kind of throughout the season, and I don't know how much Texas you watched this year, especially with them being in the SEC for the first year this year. I watched a lot of them, and I felt like it was Isaiah Bond was number 1, and then kind of Golden was number 2. But Bond kind of had a shaky, injury-riddled year this year, and so Golden kind of had to step up, and he did, and he stepped up in a pretty phenomenal way. And here Golden is drafted first round, while Bond is actually undrafted and hasn't even been signed to anybody yet, which is kind of surprising. Do you feel like, at least from what you've seen, and I don't know how many highlights or how much you watched of him, do you feel like he was worth it, or do you feel like, you kind of wish they would have gone for somebody else? Because, there's still a lot of very solid wide receivers. Because, this, other than I would say quarterback class, this is a very deep draft for just about every single position that you could need other than quarterback.
Definitely. Yeah, I think I didn't expect it at all, for sure. I don't think there's any other receivers I would have picked over him. I think Golden, the one thing I like about him the most is that he had that clutch gene. He really came through late in the season on that playoff run. That's when he really, that's where he really rose up the draft boards and became a first round pick, that and his 40-yard dash. But he really came through when Texas needed it the most, when Bond was out, and he clearly just lost a step for some reason. I think he ran like a 4.5 or something like that, which was crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened with him, but anyway, they needed him to step up, and he did. And so I think watching the tape, I actually think he probably would have been a lot better. A lot of people say like the speed, because he ran a 4.29, the speed doesn't show up on tape. I think a lot of that is because Quinn Ewers just doesn't have a strong arm.
Yeah.
I really think he just played in the system with a weaker armed quarterback and just couldn't take the top off like he needed to.
Yeah.
Or like he can, I suppose. So I think he was a good pick, and I think he was worthy of a first round selection.
Yeah. And I will say, not to super derail it, but that was kind of one of the things that I thought about when I looked at this quarterback draft class this season. It was like to me, Cam Ward was undeniably like the best quarterback in this class. But I'll say too, if you would have put him in like last year's draft class, he'd maybe break the top 10. Like realistically, he'd maybe just break the top 10. And to me, that just kind of shows the difference in the level of quarterbacks that we had coming into the draft season. I liked Quinn. I think Quinn had a lot of injury issues. Like you said, he didn't really have a strong arm. He kind of had, to me, Quinn didn't really have that it factor, if you know what I mean. Like he had the benefit of, Texas. I mean, you look at it last year, they produced two top receivers in Worthy and Adonai Mitchell. And then this year you have Golden and you have Bond, and then they have two more receivers kind of behind that. And plus he had like 5 running backs that have all been drafted and are a part of teams right now. So it's like, it's kind of hard for Quinn not to be successful when you had all that.
Good O-lineman.
Yeah. And even then it's like, how successful really were you, like as a whole type of thing? So, I mean, I didn't view him as a franchise guy. I'll be honest. I did not view Shador as a franchise guy. I know a lot of people kind of went crazy about, I know Mel Kiper went crazy about that in particular, having his whole like meltdown.
Oh my gosh.
Dude went like 13-11 at Colorado. Now, don't get it twisted. He had a great career at Jackson State. Like he went off there. But look at the level of talent you were playing with. And again, you also had Travis Hunter there the entire time. You kind of move up to Colorado, you move up to bigger, a little bit better opponents. Like you look at the Oregon game, Colorado got absolutely destroyed in that. So it's like, I didn't really see Shador as kind of that leader, even if it was one of those just from the wins column and whatnot. Like I don't expect you to go out and always win a national title or a Heisman or even compete, but it's like you never competed for the Pac-12, you never competed for the Big 12. You weren't even like close part of the time. You'd throw teammates under the bus. He even did an interview, kind of an interview, but more of a one-on-one trash talking session with Cam Ward. Said that he didn't have a running game last year. And I'm like, that's probably why you fell a little bit, brother. Like, you don't really have the intangibles. But even the other quarterbacks, like I didn't care really for Dylan Gabriel. Like I thought he would be good for Oregon. I didn't view him as like an NFL starting quarterback. Kind of same for Will Howard. I'll be honest, I was really down on Will Howard. I was like, nah, he won't lead them to a title. There's no flipping way. Sure enough, wins the damn title. I was like, oh well, sorry, Will. I'm still not gonna say you're an NFL caliber guy, but I mean, hey, good for you, man. Good for you.
I feel like he's a perfect Steeler. That's such a Steelersy pick.
Yeah, but it's funny too, because you watch him, at least I don't know if you follow him on TikTok, but like John Gruden has kind of like resurfaced with like a pretty good following and whatnot. Like to watch Will break it down, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to be honest, you at least know game better than like Jackson Dart, because I feel like that's another dude benefited from like an extremely talented team and just a phenomenal offensive system with Lane Kiffin and whatnot. It's like, what did you really do with it, though?
He is so hard to read because I think he actually does have like some really solid arm talent.
Yeah.
But if you look at his like passes, I want to say like 70% were all like designed screens, RPOs, behind the line of scrimmage. Like it was all just manufactured. So I really have no idea how he's going to translate.
Yeah, and somebody even pointed out too, if you look at a lot of the big games that he played that Ole Miss lost in, especially when they face like tough opponents, he didn't play well. I mean, they lost to LSU. They ended up beating Georgia, but I mean, it wasn't like he did it in the best looking way possible. It was like, it's a little rough that you even got that win there, buddy. So kind of back to Golden though. how do you feel that he elevates this Packers offense? Because they already have, they have a lot of guys that they're not first round picks, but they've been able to make a name for themselves. Because you've got Christian Watson, you've got Jaden Reed, you've got Romeo Dubes. So I mean, those are realistically your top three guys right there. So I mean, just kind of looking at it outside in, not seeing how he does in practice or on the field so far, Golden's looking like number 4 as far as on the depth chart goes, barring him maybe beating anybody out. I even saw a potential report that they see Jaden Reed as the number 1 option on the Packers, and I was like, to me, I thought that was Watson, and it might just be because he's more of like that speed demon. He just goes down the field, you just throw it, and he's going to be down there to catch it type thing. But what's your thoughts on it?
Well, the thing with Watson is he tore his ACL late last year. So he's probably not coming back until November at the earliest.
Right.
And so I think that's when you look at the receiver room and when you look at what Matt LaFleur does is you really need to replace that speed.
Yeah.
Like Romeo Dobbs is great.
Mhm.
Jaden Reed is good, but none of them are down the field vertical stretchers.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the role Golden plays. I think he probably comes in and is immediately the Z, maybe the X.
Right.
I think the thing I like is that he's a very natural pass catcher, is what everyone describes him as.
Yeah.
Like he's had some drops, but it doesn't look like he knows how to do it.
Right.
And that was the biggest. We were second in the league in drops. I think highest drop percentage in the league, and I think that really tanked Jordan's stats. I think that really just hurt the team a lot. And so you needed someone to come in and be a go-to guy.
Yeah.
I also think just him being able to come in and increase competition is good. I think they kind of needed a kick in the butt, like, hey, you aren't invincible here. I know we all love you.
Right.
The Packers fans were really high on the receiver room going into 2024, but they underperformed, and so here, like you're on the block right now.
Right. Right. And so that we'll kind of use that to just jump into the next topic. So this will be Jordan Love's 3rd full year as a starter. And as you know, I've never really been high on the Jordan Love train, mainly just because everybody like blew it out of proportion. Like he did do really well his first statistical year, like actually starting. I can't deny that. The dude went, 4,100 yards, 32 touchdowns, 11 picks. They went on a super, super big hot streak right there at the end of the season. Like he absolutely lit the league up. I can't deny that. But then people are coming out like, oh my God, it's the next Aaron Rodgers. Like he's the next greatest thing like ever. He's a top 5 quarterback right now. And I'm like, pump the brakes. Like, hold on. We saw Case Keenum lead the Vikings to like 13-3. And even with like a Stephon Diggs Hail Mary throw, took them to the NFC Championship. And ain't nobody sitting here saying Case Keenum is like a top 5 quarterback. Like, calm down. But much to your point, though, you talked about the Packers being like having the second most drops in the league last year. His numbers did kind of dwindle a little bit because realistically, you kind of look at it. Last year was Jordan Love's true like rookie season. This year would be technically considered his sophomore as far as starting goes. Production was definitely down. He didn't play all 17 games. He went 9-6. He had just under 3,400 yards. He had 25 touchdowns, 11 picks again. Completion percentage, he's only like a percentage point less, so I'm not really going to harp him on that. But last year, though, they paid him like a top 5 quarterback, which again, to me, I feel like is nuts. Not saying don't sign him or give him like a fair deal or whatnot and, just kind of see, but I felt like to me that was really early to do. Do you feel like now with Golden and as things kind of change now that, again, people are going to kind of evaluate him a little bit more, do you still feel like Jordan Love is the guy heading into starting year, his 3rd year now?
Yeah, 100%. That's my guy. I think he definitely did not have the best year last year. And it might sound like an excuse, but he was hurt all year. Like he really was hurt in the Eagles game, and then later on he hurt his groin, and he was playing hurt for the entire season pretty much. And it wasn't like, oh, he he sucks because he's hurt and like he shouldn't be playing. It was like, okay, he just isn't as mobile as he should be. He was definitely just off. Like we weren't running play action because he just couldn't really run it as well as we needed him to.
Yeah.
And also the drops again, it's another excuse, but it's real, you know. So I think he's got all the tools. I think especially when you add Golden and then also you add Savion Williams, third or fourth round receiver. He is crazy. I don't know if you've watched any TCU games, but he like winds up as an H-back, a halfback, a fullback. I mean, he does he's like a Debo type of guy.
Yeah.
So if they just that's just like a toy. That was just a Matt LaFleur. Just here's a toy for you to figure out how to use. Right. I think all that going into 2025 is like, I think he should have by far the best year of his career. The offensive line looks solid. Josh Jacobs is still there. I think he's definitely still the guy.
Okay. I just kind of wonder because honestly, like when he got hurt and they put Malik Willis in, it was like, okay, now what do the Packers look like? Honestly, Malik Willis balled out pretty well for him. That's where I guess to me, and again, you tell me what you think or you can correct me if I'm wrong. Don't get me wrong, I get it. Like, you know, you paid Jordan Love all this money, like Jordan Love is the starter and whatnot. But if you have your backup, it's just balling out and your starting quarterback is hurt anyway, the old adage, you know, you kind of roll with the hot hand of what you got. And I don't think realistically Malik would be the long-term solution for Green Bay. But you know what's the harm or the foul in like, hey, if we can get like a 6-7 game, you know, streak out of this kid, and even if he only goes, you know, 5-2, 4-3 at the worst, like you're still coming out above a 500 record. Like you're still in competition. You're still more than likely going to make the playoffs and whatnot. Like to me, that's where I'm kind of like, why did they go back to Love if he's hurt? Is it's like if Malik was doing poorly, like no, we're a sinking ship. We gotta get Jordan out there like fast. But again, I don't know if that's we're paying him all this money, so he needs to be out here kind of thing, or what. But that's just kind of my thought. I'm like,
trust me. I mean, there were definitely Packers fans that were saying the same thing. There's actually a surprising amount of Packer fans that are just anti-Jordan Love in general. But a lot of them were like, why not just let Malik ride, especially if Love is banged up? I think it was really, at the time, it was the 2-game stretch with Malik. We were playing Minnesota. It was the first division game. I just think they really wanted Jordan back for that game, and so they kind of rushed him back. Ended up, I think that game went pretty poorly. I think we kind of got smacked. And I think after that, it was like, why take him out now, I guess? Fair. Like just let him try to work through it. And I think that was just kind of what it was.
So
of course the contract.
Right. So real quick, since you alluded to it, I don't know if you happen to know, but I do have to ask as a kind of a fellow Jordan Love hater, just because of, again, everybody putting him up on a pedestal like he's the greatest thing ever. And I'm like, wait.
Well, let's be clear here. You're also a Packers hater.
Yes, I am. But what are the Packers fans saying that don't like him? Like, are they kind of saying the same thing? Like they think they maybe paid too early? Because like I said, to me, especially when I evaluate a lot of the quarterbacks whenever they come out of the draft, it's like, okay, to me, you got 3 years, right? Like rookie year, they typically do really well because again, nobody really knows what is their game going to look like at the next level. You know, can they figure it out? Can they do really well? They might catch some people off guard and kind of, you know, surprise them and whatnot. So I'm like, okay, rookie year's fine. Sophomore season, all right, defensive coordinators, teams have more film on them. Like, okay, this is some of the tendencies that the dude tries to tend to do and whatnot. We'll focus and hone in on those. They might have a little bit of a sophomore slump type thing. Then third year, it's like, okay, everybody kind of knows your game. You've come in the first, this is now your second season. Now you've kind of learned. Now people have kind of figured you out. How have you adapted to it? How do you move forward from it then? So I feel like the third season is really that kind of make or break season for a guy as far as starting goes of like, okay, this is going to be the starting quarterback or we're going to have to potentially move on. And to me, again, if I had been like the Packers GM, I'd assign him to like a 3-year deal, pay him a fairly decent amount. I wouldn't make him like one of the highest paid quarterbacks ever. But that's what I would do. Be like, look, man, we'll give you 3 years to truly start, kind of see where you're at. And if we feel really good, even halfway through year 3 or whatnot, we'll start working as far as contract negotiations go.
Yeah, I definitely agree with like that assessment, like the 3-year window. I think that's probably pretty fair. The hard part with Love was, we just had him sit. So he started his 4th year.
Yeah.
He had his 5th year 5th year option.
Yeah.
It was just kind of an awkward timing. You kind of had to pay him, and unfortunately, the quarterback market is what it is.
Right.
I mean, we saw quarterbacks worse than him get paid. Just like, Tua just got a bag, I think.
Tua got a bag.
Dak is paid.
Dak got a massive bag.
Always go back to the Daniel Jones contract.
Say Daniel Jones.
Was hilarious.
Hey, man, Daniel Jones, Kirk Cousins too. Like whoever these guys' agents are, like they deserve. Like if I'm Dak,
oh my gosh,
I'm looking at my agent like, hey, brother, you got me $60 million a year. I'm gonna slide you like 10 mil just for that.
Yeah, like, the quarterback contracts are insane. But for Love, I think the thing the Packers fans don't like, and I think it's really just comes from watching Aaron Rodgers. A lot of these are Aaron Rodgers, like that's where the era they grew up in. Like myself, you never saw Aaron Rodgers put the ball in harm's way. Like if you did, like you were like, whoa, what just happened?
Right.
Jordan Love is a gunslinger. Like that man's gonna throw it whenever he wants, wherever he wants.
Yeah.
So he throws a lot more picks. And I think it's just a culture shock to a lot of Packers fans going from that to Jordan Love, and I think they just are kind of holding him to a very high standard for someone his age.
But that's what's funny though. So for me, like I grew up watching Brett Favre, gunslinger who threw a ton of picks.
Everyone thought he was going to be the next Aaron Rodgers. He's more like Brett Favre.
Right. And I think that to me is where I'm like, okay, I wouldn't mind that as much because I'm like, okay, he's got Brett Favre tendencies. Like you said, he's a gunslinger. And obviously, he threw 11 picks, both years that he started. So he's not necessarily, it's not like he's throwing, 20, 30 picks. He there is some efficiency there. But yeah, I kind of wonder because I'm like, this is how I viewed it personally. And again, everybody's like, oh, you're just a hater. I'm like, again, why you're paying this man this much money? You get one good season. This could all go to poop like real fast. And then y'all out a ton of money for this.
Yeah, 2 playoffs in this first year. So far, I think it's been all right.
And realistically,
this is a big year, though.
And realistically, he didn't play great, but the Packers were the only team that gave the Eagles really a run, last year through their Super Bowl victory, and they won like 22-13. And you're like, wait a minute, 22-13. Like, why does this look like a fairly close game? And Love threw like 3 picks just in that game by himself.
Yeah. Offensive line got destroyed in that game, like injury-wise, and it was just, it got really rough on offense. But the defense, bringing in Jeff Hafley, that was a huge step forward for the Packers. That defense really was playing lights out last year.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so we will take a real quick break. We're gonna play. You Can't Spell Hero Without Her by. I think his name's John Coffey. I know Coffee is in there. I could be completely wrong. But we will play that when we come back. We'll talk about our last topic. We'll talk about Aaron Rodgers and if he will sign with the Steelers or not as he continues to draw out his long drama-filled offseason like he does every single season, as Jackson knows very well being a Packers fan. When we come back, we'll dive into that.
Signed up to fight for freedom. What a price you had to pay. Picture in a helmet, missing family every day. Your Lady Liberty, dressed like G.I. Jane. Some scars we'll never see. She will never be the same. She's a mother, she's a daughter. She's a sister and a friend, standing tall in that uniform until the very end. When Uncle Sam called, she signed that line to serve, 'cause you can't spell hero without her. On that old dusty base with the meadows that shine, she's been to hell and back for the stars and the stripes. Your Lady Liberty, dressed like G.I. Jane, and some scars we'll never see, and she will never be the same. She's a mother, she's a daughter, she's a sister and a friend, standing tall in that uniform until the very end. When Uncle Sam called, she signed that line to serve, 'cause you can't spell hero without her. Yeah, yes. For the ones that didn't make it, we will pause and then we cry. We can still see their smile in every sunrise. She's a mother, she's a daughter, she's a sister and a friend, standing tall in that uniform until the very end. When Uncle Sam called, she signed that line to serve, 'cause you can't spell hero without her. 'Cause you can't spell hero without her.
All right, welcome back into Inside the Hoosier Mind, brought to you in part by Military Broadcast Radio, helping give veterans a voice. And shout out to Coffee Anderson. I knew Coffee was in there. I don't know why I thought John Coffey, like from the Green Mile. Like, great movie, by the way, great actor. R.I.P. to him. But shout out to Coffee Anderson for You Can't Spell Hero Without Her. Back here with Jackson for our last topic of the night. We're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers, and all the rumors has it, all the signs point to he's going to sign with Pittsburgh. He's going to be a Steeler. Realistically, it's the only halfway decent spot left that truly needs a quarterback. They did draft a dude. They drafted Will Howard in the 6th round. But right now their quarterback room is Will Howard, Skylar Thompson, and Mason Rudolph. So not a whole lot of hope there. Just to start out with. But Pittsburgh kind of made news this past week because they traded George Pickens to Dallas. So Pittsburgh kind of goes from, you got two really big diva wide receivers and Pickens and Metcalf of, okay, well, these are big dudes to throw to. You're going to throw to one while the other gets in a fist fight with the defensive backs. So, I mean, they're going to be open. But two big diva wide receivers, a potential huge diva and quarterback. Do you think the Pickens move maybe deters Rodgers a little bit? Or again, do you think that realistically this is kind of his last shot and his last place to go to? Because I know he wanted to go to Minnesota, funny enough, wanted to complete the Brett Favre villain arc, even though he hated Brett Favre forever. I'm like, you are following his exact footsteps to a T. The Vikings didn't want him. I know there's rumors he might try to go to the Giants, but again, kind of looking at the Giants and what they have, that's a little bit of a mess, and I don't know if the Giants want to put up with that or not.
Probably not at this point.
Yeah.
I do think it is the only option. The only other one that even makes any sense is the Saints now that Derek Carr is retired. I guess maybe. But I think the Steelers is the only one that makes sense. I mean, Steelers need that. I mean, like, desperately.
Yes.
Like, they went out and got DK and paid him a bunch of money because they want to win, not because they want to start Mason Rudolph.
Right.
I think I would hope the Steelers have seen enough of Mason Rudolph. And the weird thing this time around is he keeps alluding to like this big like personal matter that is just
Right.
taking such a big precedent in his life. I have no idea what that could be about. I don't know if he's having a kid, if he's like, I don't know, but there's something going on that's holding him up. But I do think he ultimately ends up a Steeler.
See, here's the funny thing. I don't see him having a kid. Like realistically, because at least with what I would say the last 7 to 8 years is when I feel like Aaron has really kind of come out of his shell and really been more of a vocal diva of I want this, I only want this, it's all about me. I said it for years, and I don't know if you remember in the group chats or not. I used to say it for years with Green Bay. It was like he would take him to the 1 seed and they would host and then they'd lose. And then the very next year he's like, "Oh, I need more money." But then like the very next day he's complaining, "Oh, they're not getting me any help." And I'm like, "Well, what cap space do they have left, dude? Like any cap space they have open, you're like, you need to pay me more money." Well,
Yeah.
but you could use that to go get like a free agent wide receiver. Like you could get help. No, I need more money. The math is not mathing, my guy. But
yeah, he was definitely getting paid a pretty penny by Green Bay for a while there.
for a long time. But I think it's funny because if you remember last year, it was the darkness retreat of like, oh, am I going to retire? Am I not going to retire? He's doing like the whole Groundhog Day thing. If he sees a shadow, he's going to retire. And yeah, now this year it's like he's been more open. He's like, yeah, I don't know if I want to sign yet. And it's like he just kind of goes dark for a little bit. Then he comes back up. Then it goes away. Yeah, I completely forgot all about the Saints with Derek Carr retiring. But again, I kind of look at the Saints though. It's like you have a new head coach that's a young offensive guy. I don't know how well Aaron would take that. And realistically, what do the Saints have to work with?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it makes a lot of sense for him. He's probably got 1 year left.
Right.
You would think he would want to go to a team that actually can compete.
Right.
My thing is, if he's like waiting this long, like maybe he thinks like he doesn't have it, and if he thinks that's the case, then he should just hang it up.
Right.
I will say with Rodgers, I'm obviously I've always been a big fan of his. I think he did get a lot better as the year went on, coming off that Achilles. A 40-year-old coming off an Achilles injury was never going to be very good.
Right.
Once the season was basically over for them, is ironically when he started actually playing decent.
Right.
I think he could do something with the Steelers. I think he could probably take them to the playoffs and maybe just get bounced in the first. But I really am interested. Like, I don't really know what the holdup is because that's it's the only place.
Yeah, because that's kind of my thought. I'm like, because I get it. You don't necessarily have to be there for a lot of the off-season stuff, but it's like, why not start getting the chemistry started now? Get to know your offensive line guys. I know running back was a little bit of a question for them and whatnot. I know they drafted Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. Apparently, they signed another big name in the backfield. I don't remember who it is. It's not one of those like it's not like eye popping, but it was kind of a fairly big name that they signed. They traded for DK and at one point had DK and George Pickens both. You still got Pat Fryermuth at tight end. And obviously the defense is still solid. You still got TJ Watt. You've still got Minka Fitzpatrick. Cam Hayward still chugging along. 40 years later, man is still playing for the Steelers and whatnot. So there is a lot of potential there. And I don't disagree. I think he could very well take them potentially into the first round. Here's where I think he would struggle, though, is the division that he's in with the AFC North. Because, you've got to face Cincy twice, and albeit defensively, Cincy's probably not going to do much. They're going to score a ton of points on you. Baltimore, kind of the same thing. They always have a tough time with Baltimore no matter what. And even though Cleveland is the Browns and is a Brown show, they've kind of split the series with Pittsburgh the last couple of years and whatnot as far as making it pesky for him. So it's like, would he even make it as a wild card team type of thing?
Yeah, I think I think it's more just trusting Tomlin more than anything. Trust Tomlin he's done it with worse really realistically.
Yeah.
I definitely see why he wanted to go to the Vikings. That's a much better situation
Yeah.
where you can just sling it with Kevin O'Connell and Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison.
Jordan Addison, yeah.
And now Ty Felton too.
Right.
I definitely
And,
see why that was the goal, but Hawkinson.
Yeah. Like I said, I just think it's funny he tried to complete the Brett Favre villain arc, and even though, again, I know you probably saw it or maybe you didn't. I know it might be close to the end of your time because I remember, they kind of asked him, oh, how did you feel about Brett Favre as a mentor? And he's like, oh, Brett never taught me anything.
Yeah.
Like he was so anti Brett Favre. Even
Brett didn't like him.
Yeah,
it was pretty mutual.
And realistically, like if you're looking at it from Brett's perspective, like you've been the guy, like he was what, a like 7th round pick, like 3rd round
Something
pick
like
for
that,
Atlanta.
yeah.
Like he was super low on the depth chart at Atlanta, didn't really play. Green Bay trades for him. His first game is an absolute disaster. And I think 4 games in, he has this like massive win. And then he's the starter for Green Bay for almost 2 decades, and sets all these records, does all this greatness, even gets Green Bay to a Super Bowl and wins them one, which is something Aaron was able to do. But yeah, I'm just kind of sitting there and I'm like, I get it, because it's like I've been doing this for years, and then you get the kid to replace me. Like, no, I'm not going to train my replacement. Like, that's not happening.
Yeah,
but
it's the Packers way. They did it again with Love.
They did, but I feel
they're always thinking 2 steps ahead.
But I feel like Aaron was maybe a little bit more accepting of Love. Not like, hey, kid, let me take you under my wing. I feel like he's maybe a little bit more open. But again, if you don't like the guy that, is like, hey, not training you, kid. Absolutely not. Why are you following in his footsteps? Why did you go to the Jets? Brett Favre went to the Jets. Don't go to the Jets. Go anywhere but
I don't
the
know why
Jets.
anybody would want to go to the Jets ever.
And then he's
the
like,
place where quarterbacks go to die.
And so not only then are you going to have to hear, oh, you're following Brett Favre's footsteps. You went to the Jets. Now it's, I want to go to the Vikings. There's another Green Bay Jets quarterback that did that too. War number 4, and also went to the Vikings.
I think he definitely knew that. He was well aware. He just wanted to do it for shits and giggles, probably.
Maybe he did. What if kind of find out like him and Brett Favre were just like best bros now, and he's like, you know what?
I think they are like pretty cool. I don't know how they're like friends, but I think they did kind of mend the fences a little bit.
I think they did. I think when Favre came up there a couple years ago and they'd retired his number and his jersey and whatnot. I think I remember them saying like, hey, Aaron, how do you feel about Brett coming up here? He's like, oh, Brett and I are fine. Like we're on good terms. Like everything's cool.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, mended stuff with Brett.
Yeah.
Even though he still wanted to follow the villain arc, which makes me laugh. But Jackson, buddy,
it would have been ironic. It would have been perfect.
Oh yeah, I was kind of rooting for it, honestly. Like they're and
I would have been so upset.
Even as somebody who I follow and root for the Bears, like there's a small part of me was like, you have the opportunity to do the funniest thing and take the Brett Favre villain arc and multiply it by like 5. Because Packers fans and Vikings fans already don't get along. If you were to come to the Bears, oh my God. Ultimate villain arc if you were to do that, man.
I guess he doesn't need to do that. He's already got stake in the team. He doesn't need to play for him too.
I was going to say, what better part be like, well, I own the Bears, so why don't I just be their starting quarterback? Like, again, there's so many
There's probably collusion or something there. It probably wasn't allowed.
Like as big a wrestling fans as you and I are, like there's so many like Seth Rollins villain arc storylines he could have taken there with that.
Biggest heel turn.
Exactly. Biggest heel turn. But Jackson, buddy, I appreciate you coming on, man. Appreciate you hanging out and talking some football and whatnot with me, man.
Anytime.
Appreciate everybody tuning in. We will be back. I don't exactly know when because it's the off season for football and whatnot, but we'll be back and hope everybody enjoyed the show. If you liked everything that you saw, please check out more of the Military Broadcast Radio shows here. You have a ton of other great veterans that are going to be on giving life advice, kind of telling their stories, letting their voices be heard and whatnot. Right after this is actually Dog Tag Divas by Kristen Leone. I hope I didn't butcher that. But she is a nurse in the Navy that shares her stories and whatnot and shares her experiences. So definitely check her out after this. But appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll be back later.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.